Mayapuri scrap market, hundreds of workers spend their days dismantling heavy industrial machinery by hand. It is raw, unprotected physical labor, stripping down rusted metal for resale. But what do you do when the metal you are breaking apart begins breaking you apart from the inside? The source of the threat started here. In 1968, Delhi University's chemistry department purchased an Atomic Energy of Canada Gamma Cell 220. It was a massive research irradiator, heavily shielded with lead, to safely contain the high-energy gamma rays inside. By 1985, the technology became obsolete. The university stopped using the machine, leaving it to sit in a quiet laboratory corner, gathering dust for the next 25 years. Then, in February 2010, the university made a fatal error. Without obtaining the mandatory safety clearance from the Atomic Energy Regulatory Board, they auctioned the unit off to a local dealer as standard scrap metal for about 1.5 lakh rupees. That illegal sale turned the gamma cell into an orphan source. In radiological terms, an orphan source is simply a radioactive material that has fallen completely outside of regulatory control and monitoring. By bypassing a single administrative safety protocol, a highly controlled scientific instrument became an untraceable, invisible hazard loose in a major city. This timeline tracks the breakdown in oversight. The equipment was purchased in 1968, completely abandoned by 1985, and illegally auctioned off into the public domain on February 26, 2010. On March 12th, the equipment arrived at Harcharan Singh Bola's scrapyard. Unaware of the heavy lead casing, workers immediately went to work with hammers and gas cutters to extract the valuable metal at the center. This diagram shows the internal structure of the gamma cell. At its core was a highly concentrated cage of cobalt-60, a synthetic radioactive isotope that constantly emits penetrating gamma rays. The central core was built to hold exactly 16 individual stainless steel rods, known in the industry as pencils. Housed tightly inside each of those pencils were 7 small radioactive slugs, or metallic pellets. That math reveals the true scale of the exposure. A total of 112 lethal pellets were ripped from their shielding and scattered directly onto the dirt floor of the Mayapuri scrapyard. The physical destruction of that containment unit triggered a Level 4 accident with local consequences on the International Nuclear Event Scale. The danger of any radioactive device is entirely dependent on the physical integrity of its shielding. Once breached, the hazard is immediate. Imagine picking up a tiny piece of the sun and putting it in your pocket. It is radiating immense amounts of destructive energy directly into your tissue, but your nerve endings register absolutely no heat. That describes the exact experience of Ajay Jain, a local scrap dealer. He found a small cobalt-60 fragment, thought it looked interesting, and unwittingly carried it around in his wallet for several days. By late March, the biological toll became impossible to ignore. Workers and shop owners began exhibiting severe acute radiation syndrome. Their skin darkened with necrosis, their hair fell out, and they suffered constant nausea as the radiation rapidly suppressed their bone marrow. A 35-year-old worker named Rajendra Prasad absorbed an estimated 3.1 gray dose of radiation. That level of exposure silently destroyed his body's ability to produce white blood cells and platelets. The true horror of an orphan source is its sensory invisibility. The victims were being methodically destroyed by the exact scrap metal they relied on for their livelihood, without seeing or feeling a single warning sign. Updating our timeline, the machine arrived at the yard on March 12th. By late March, the dismantling was complete, and the first severe biological symptoms began to surface. On April 4th, shop owner Deepak Jain was hospitalized with suspected poisoning. 3 days later, doctors at Apollo Hospital analyzed the distinct pattern of his skin burns and plummeting blood cell counts. They recognized the signature of severe radiation exposure and immediately notified the Atomic Energy Regulatory Board. The government response was massive. Authorities descended on Mayapuri in the dead of night, erecting barricades and locking down the entire market as confusion spread through the local population. Specialized teams from the National Disaster Response Force and the Baba Atomic Research Center arrived, strapping into thick protective hazmat suits and respiratory gear to enter the site safely. The recovery was a slow, agonizing process. Teams had to sweep Geiger counters over tons of assorted junk, hunting for invisible radiation hotspots to track down all 112 scattered metallic slugs. One by one, the recovered fragments were dropped into heavy lead-shielded flasks and transported away to the eLORA atomic power station, where they were placed into permanent, secure storage. The logistical nightmare of recovering just a handful of tiny metallic pellets from a scrapyard highlights a brutal reality of nuclear material. Preventing a leak takes standard paperwork, but cleaning one up takes an army. Despite aggressive medical care, the damage was already done. On April 26th, Rajendra Prasad passed away from multi-organ failure and septicemia. The legal fallout was severe. By September 2011, the Delhi police filed formal criminal charges against 6 professors from Delhi University's chemistry department, holding them responsible for negligence causing death. The Atomic Energy Regulatory Board suspended the university's radiation license for years. They also entirely overhauled their electronic licensing system, known as eLORA, creating strict new protocols to track the movement of all radioactive material across India. The Mayapuri disaster proved that the most immediate nuclear threat to the public does not usually come from a complex reactor meltdown. It comes from an obsolete piece of academic equipment, improperly discarded and sold for scrap. Rigid, unforgiving regulatory oversight is the only barrier standing between the routine tools of scientific progress and total public catastrophe. This final timeline details the conclusion of the event. The rapid emergency response from April 4th through the 10th, the fatality on April 26th, and the resulting criminal charges filed in September 2011.